How do you align a team that doesn't seem to be on the same page? Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Will. Let's get into it.
When talking about transparency, what would you say are mindsets or fears that hold leaders from having the difficult conversations, from being transparent?
That was my question too.
I took it away from you.
Darn
Oh,
it.
so someone who is kind of a classic oversharer, and I will take this back a bit to the struggles and the learnings that I had as that regional executive director. Was one of the ways that I kind of came back when I got feedback was like, well, let me just talk more about the challenges and let me model with transparency what are the things that I'm thinking about. And I think now the hesitation has become from the learning of this, which was like the reaction wasn't like, oh, thank God, we're like getting more information from our leader. This is helping. We trust him more. Um, it was kind of the inverse of it. It was like, well, why are you like, this is actually making us more stressed. Why do you not have a handle on what we're doing? And I think so to answer the question, I think one of the concerns or fears that now I have to like talk myself through is like, how do I share what I would like to? Because I do tend to be on the oversharing side. But no, again, intent versus impact. Like the impact might not be, is the audience ready to receive that level of detail? Are they in a place where they're going to be in a problem solving thought partnership mode to be able to like upon hearing this from a senior leader, oh, I'm activated to like jump in and help figure this out? Or are they going to be paralyzed with more anxiety, question the direction of the organization, and be then a detractor from where we really need strong crisis management or leadership, right? Like, I think that's a part where people, as I've talked with others and I've observed others, like where I see people hesitating on information sharing is I'm like, oh, I suspect there's probably some cost benefit happening in their minds of like, is this going to lead to the clarity people are like asking for that will help them be recommitted to what's happening? Or is this going to be, like I knew it, there was a problem, I knew something's going on, kind of like confirmation bias of bad things, and therefore it makes situations worse, or it doesn't help build that culture, community of trust that you're trying to establish in an organization when you talk about better communication outcomes. And so that would be my take, is that, we leaders are being really thoughtful about like the cost benefit of, is this going to help or hurt the asks that are being made around transparency, or is this what they're actually asking for, the answer to some of these questions right now? Again, because things change all the time, is it going to create a unintended consequence that is not helping the culture or helping what people are asking for in terms of more information, but rather create more fragmented experiences?
Mm.
Uh,
You can go ahead, Lucy.
okay.
You can finish.
Thank you. Well, what I'm hearing is it's part of that, our own emotional landscape in a way, and our own stress if we are the leader. And oftentimes our survival instinct, if we don't have the certainty, we don't want to say anything. And at the same time, that could actually sabotage the trust on the team. And I've had clients when they say people are gossiping, but no leader is saying anything. And that creates a lot of anxiety in everybody. And nobody's
Right.
focused or motivated because they're thinking about the worst case scenario. So in those
Yeah.
situations,
Yeah.
even having, we don't know yet, but we'll keep you informed, I'm hearing from those clients, would be better than just silence. Um, and that goes down to our own internal regulation, which is one of my passions. Here's a question: what do you do for yourself in those situations when you feel that anxiety and that uncertainty? What do you do to calm down and to get clarity for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I think that this has been actually a really important decision point for me as I've thought about where is kind of the right place for me to be working and giving my passion, and what are the missions that are passionate, that make me get excited. And I think realizing proximity to having experience and having the privilege of being in the leadership roles that I have been, I would say earlier in my career, I had a lot of responsibilities. Like, I think that taught me that I actually really need to be in somewhat close proximity to leadership and the point of view of the organizational, like people driving the organization strategy, whether that's the CEO or the board or both. And so for me, decisions to move on to new opportunities or to think about, am I having the greatest impact? Am I able to manage the anxieties that I have? To your actual question, the, part of that answer is like, am I in the right place and in the right position to be able to do that? Because being a little bit on the outer rings, once I had the opportunity to be in a more closer ring to leadership, makes it really hard for me to not like that. Proximity actually matters a lot in managing anxiety. Um, Trusting that I have the experiences that provide good thought partnership to leaders, and that my experiences are valuable in some of the trickier questions that orgs might be asking themselves. Like, owning that in a confident way. And it's not like about being arrogant. That's a big part of my experience. Like, I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to come across as like I've learned all these magical things and like, please trust me. But like, that was a real part for me in my like these transition points in my career is like, am I in a position and in a role where I'm able to like both give and continue to receive in a learning continuous like growth mindset kind of way to be able to navigate those tougher times and where I am personally anxious about stuff? Like, part of what
Mm.
helps my anxiety is channel it into, well, what can I do to help people see things differently? What can I offer in terms of a facilitated type of conversation? What prompt can I throw into this check-in that will help? Again, some of it's a little bit self-oriented, but it's like, this will help me get clarity on where the question and ambiguity is. But ultimately, I'm also thinking about like, again, now serving as chief of staff, like big part of my role is like aligning a lot of different perspectives in a lot of different ways. And so it's managing my own anxiety is a part of it, but it's also like, this is the effectiveness of my role. Is how, if I'm worried about it or feeling like this not completely clear, there's at least two others that are. And so how am I
Mm.
using my position, my relationships with my co-leaders for good to help us all be more thoughtful in how we communicate, or just naming like, people are going to be tense about this right now until we have more information, and how can we communicate that isn't weird or awkward, like doesn't make it worse, but just no news is not necessarily bad news or good news, but it's right now no news. um
Mm.
and I think being that channeling anxiety into proactive solutioning and problem solving is the way I was when I was in my early 20s, right? Like, that's kind of how I grew up, was like, all right, I gotta to like channel it into something productive. And I feel like that's a big part of what I still kind of lean on today.
Mm.
I love it.
We should, as you're talking, I'm now thinking we should have a panel discussion with you and a few other people about how to be confident in the value that you bring into
Mm,
spaces. Especially, we could bring in other people of color and women. I think that'd be a great
mhm.
conversation for that.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we hope you'll come back for that one.
We didn't scare
Would
you.
love to.
Hopefully, we
No, I
didn't
would
scare
love
you.
to. It's
Well,
it's a emerging. I mean, confidence for me overall has been
that's right.
something that I've been working and developing over my lifetime. And so to continue to learn and absorb from others is something I'm always
Yeah,
open to and curious about, for sure. So would love that.
nice.
All right.
Will, sometimes people skip the first part of this episode. They're like, part one, I never listened to part one. I only watched part two in my life. And let's say they opened this episode and they said, you know what? Also, I don't care about the first 25 minutes. I only care about the last 10 minutes. And they skip forward to this exact point. If they, what would you tell them other than go back and listen to the entire thing and watch the entire thing? What are 1 to 2 big takeaways you would have for somebody from this conversation we had?
I think, first is, everybody's journey is their own. And I appreciated kind of the beginning of this conversation for people who maybe didn't hear it. I look back at my childhood and I look back at the values and the perspectives that those around me, in my case, it was my parents, but in other cases, I know it's others. But like that instilled in me the journey that I then became on. And so I think, I try to listen to things like this with an openness of like, that's their journey, but what can I take from it that is meaningful for me? And so I think that's a big part here is like, hopefully, some of the things that I've shared will give people the opportunity to just ask themselves the question, what does insight mean to me? How open have I been to it? What more do I want to gain from it? And how does that impact the leadership that I'm able to offer and provide
Mm,
to an organization or to my colleagues who also serve as leaders? I think the other piece is just, and we were talking quite a bit about this, is you know the things I hate the most are like circle back to or things that are like common sayings that are also pretty vague. It's like, well, we're saying we're not dismissing it, but I'm also not giving you some specificity of when and how we might get back to that. Same thing with kind of
mm,
transparency. And so I think the other big thing is like how do you kind of challenge people to say what they mean and mean what they say and be specific. And it's okay to go back and be like, I know I said last week we talk about this next week, but I'm going to need 3 more days because of X, Y, or Z. Like I just think that that builds trust more than in my experience that builds more trust than like we'll circle back to that in the future and then it's like is that next week, is that
yeah,
never, was that a
yeah,
punt? That integrity component is, and it's also influenced by being a parent. Like kids want to know when they're going to get the opportunity for the next thing, and the more specific I am, the more manageable it is. And I
yeah.
think that's a big part of this too. Is like, what does transparency mean for you as a leader? What does it mean to balance the tension of both the emotional needs of individuals as well as the strategic direction and the pressure points that an organization might feel, both internally driven but also externally driven? And how do you talk about trade-offs more directly in a way that enables people to understand that the outcome here is unlikely to be like their pure preference with no compromise? And I think because I
Mm,
think people understand that compromise is a part of life. So speaking to that in a real way, I think is really important. And it helps people understand that that's what you're navigating or that's what the team has
yeah.
to navigate right now as an imperfect outcome from on everyone's standards. But we're going to try to optimize for what's best for the organization or for the participants in the program, knowing that we're going to have to make some amounts of trade-offs. And so I would give listeners the opportunity to think about what does that mean for you and your organization? What does that mean for you in the different roles that you play? And how do you lean into that with the opportunity, knowing that like that can help build trust, that can help build connection for people who may be feeling like, is it black or white? Is it this or that? The nuance is often in the middle. And I think sometimes that language can really help people prepare for an understanding that
Mm,
that's where it's going to be.
yeah. I love that. I love that trade-offs. I'll probably start using that too because I think it's just a great way of describing it. People can
Yeah.
intuitively get it and understand that phrasing. One thing
Been
we didn't
powerful for me for
describe,
sure. Yeah.
and one thing we didn't describe here that might be worth describing maybe in another episode is the reality that once you decide on that course of action, some people may decide that's not the direction they want to go in, and there might be times when you say, "Okay, that we have to part ways because that's not where you want to go, and that's we wish everybody the best, but that's not the way we're going."
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Will, if you were to finish the sentence, how would you finish it? The conversation I wish more leaders would have is.
Um, I think conversations that bring in vulnerability, but for the purpose of building connection and trust. I think some of the most powerful moments that I've had in my leadership is when, and this is not lightning by giving an example, but what I mean by it is not just saying like, I'm a highly anxious person and just throwing that into the universe, but saying what we're experiencing right now is possibly creating there's a lot of uncertainty here. And I know that people are struggling with, manage that differently. One of the things that really helps me in these times of ambiguity is blank. And then, it's like using self-disclosure as a means for illustrating connection and that it's tough. I think it's that vulnerability again, but being really mindful of how it is going to help or, make people feel connection to what the discussion is something I think I think sometimes it's like I'm going to show positivity and strength and I'm going to show confidence in I think sometimes confidence comes through vulnerability. And I sometimes wish that leaders were more comfortable bringing that into their toolbox of communication. Is this is a moment where showing some vulnerability will actually really help people feel more confident in me and the organization. This isn't the time to hammer home all of the accomplishments that I've had. Like where people may be down in my confidence. It's actually more about where I show this is a really tough lesson I had to learn,
Yeah.
which is why I'm navigating today with a sense of optimism, or with a sense of deeper insight around what might be necessary for us to get through this.
Hmm.
I love it.
Nice. What's a phrase you've retired from your leadership vocabulary?
Oh, sort of a little bit this earlier, but just like kind of vague statements. That I think are helpful meeting closers or next step things. But I try to be like, not just like, let's talk about this next time, but like, or circle back to that, or transparency for the sake of transparency, dot, dot, dot. It's, in order to make sure we're staying aligned during this really challenging time where there's a lot of nuance happening, we're going to
Yeah.
commit to talk about this at our next meeting on Thursday. And even if there's nothing to update on, I will share that on Thursday. There's nothing to update on. But like, I think trying to retire overused, good meeting closer, next steps type of phrases that replace them with some level of specificity that I can commit to, um, helps people be like, okay, that's where I can count on
Okay.
having more conversation about it or whatever.
Yeah. You're giving me PTSD. A phrase that I used to
I'm
hate.
sorry.
A phrase I used to hate before COVID when everything was in person all the time. The phrase I hated the most was when somebody during a meeting, they would say to each other, let's take this offline.
Yeah.
It would drive me mad because I was like, we are offline. There's not more offline that we can get right here, right now. Now it makes sense. Now it's like reasonable. But like before, it's like the stupidest phrase.
Yeah.
Um, Will, how can people learn about you? Let's say they have a question. They're like, I got to learn from Will directly. How can they follow you or reach you or just touch base with you?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. My full given name is Thomas Hobart, so I'm on LinkedIn. I'm under Will Hobart, but if you're looking for my hyperlink, it's like whatever linkedin.com/in/Thomas Hobart. But certainly you can reach out to me there. My email is there. I'm with the Golden Apple Foundation for Excellence in Teaching now, serving as their chief of staff, and so would love to talk to folks about education reform, the national teacher shortage, and anything that people want to do to either get into the teaching profession or help us to grow our impact and mission as well. Would happy to talk about that as well.
Love it. Lucy, what do you got going on for the people if they want to reach out to you?
If anybody wants to reach out to me, of course, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Still, disclaimer, I'm still slow there. You can reach out to me on my website, mindfittery.com. And if you are curious what kind of internal mindsets or fears could sabotage you from having the courageous conversations as a leader, or even you are an employee and you need to make those decisions and you want to make them from your best calm mind and clear-headed space, you can take the assessment mindfitter.com/be free, so you can discover how you can set yourself free from that sabotage. Chris, what about you? How people can reach you?
I would say two things. Number one, I've said this all year round, but one of my New Year's resolutions this year is to win the lottery. And so if anybody has the winning Mega Millions Powerball number, if you could just give that to me or share that with me, I'll share it with you. I think there's plenty to go around.
Love that.
So I would love to share that. That's one of mine. Second, as you know, I'm on this mission to end accidental leadership. I want small and mid-sized nonprofits and the professional service firms to thrive. So I have a leadership academy, and I got really cool results with the organization that we just finished with. So if you want the case study just to see what we did and how well they kind of turned things around, check out the link in the comments so you can read all about it yourself and see what happens. But Will, thank you so much for talking today. I really enjoyed diving deeper kind of into your story and kind of how you're approaching leadership.
Thank you both for having me.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our episode with Will. And we have a quick announcement to make. If you are listening or watching to this in 2026, June or July, or August, please know that we are taking a summer break this year, Chris and I, after our third year of this podcast. You will still be able to reach us over LinkedIn or by email, or make a comment on YouTube or wherever you are watching or listening to our podcast. And we will be back with new season and new episodes in October 2026. So we will have now 2 more episodes with Frank Velasquez. So make sure to tune in next week and 2. And then we'll have a final recap, season 3 episode, and then we'll see you in October after our summer break. Just a quick information for you so you know we are not going away, we are just taking a little break.